Hello, Glenn. So, with uh, the recent happenings of CrowdStrike and all that stuff, I've decided to re-record my previous attempt at bringing you this review for Glen, and this particular review for Glen is, of course, Linux. And my previous attempt, I was using Arch Linux. And then I thought, oh, you know what? That's not really fair, because is Glenn going to install Arch Linux? No, Glenn is absolutely not going to install Arch Linux. Glenn might install Endeavor OS or Manjaro or Garuda or any number of different Arch-based distributions, but that one was using Arch Linux. And that's just not fair. And Glenn used Cashy OS? No, Glenn's not going to use Cashy OS. Who's going to use Cashy OS? A guy like me might use Cashy OS. In fact, I love it. It's a great distribution. It is a great Linux to use. However, it is not for beginners. And it's not for beginners because the backend is, of course, Arch Linux. And so the very first thing that you need to know before we even get into this review is how Linux updates its software. And there are a bunch of different ways that it does it. But the way that you really should look at it is you've got the long-term release cycles, the stable release, where they put in the critical updates and you don't really have anything update that's major. And then you have what's called a rolling release, where it updates as soon as the new packages or as soon as the new software is available, instead of going through a longer testing period to make sure that everything works and gels together. So I thought, what is Glen most likely to use? And of course, you can see right here that it's Linux Mint. And so you have a bunch of stuff installed on Linux Mint by default, like a calculator. Take that, Apple. And you've got graphics stuff like Pix, which does image organization, and you have a document scanner and drawing. You have internet stuff like Thunderbird Mail and Firefox web browser. Ooh, Firefox. Let's open up Firefox web browser here. Let's see. It's going to take a little while. And why is it going to take a little while? Well, I don't have this installed. The very first point of superiority when it comes to Linux. Now, I'm not saying Linux is always superior. What I'm saying is Linux is sometimes superior, and Windows is sometimes superior. And Mac OS. So look, here we have your default. Well, let's just go to Wikipedia. Oh, oh, I wonder how fast that was. Let's go to fast.com. Uh, oh, look at that. It has good speeds. I don't have this installed. Why don't I have this installed? Well, because I'm using something else. If you just take a look over here, you'll see this is what I'm using right now. This is a Okay, so I don't have fast fetch installed, but you can see right there the mix shell -p fast fetch. That's going to show you that I have something else installed already, and it is in fact NixOS. So I do a fast fetch, and we see all of the stats that we have, and I'm using Hyperland and all this stuff because why? Because I've been using Linux for a while, and I'm very technically minded in comparison to a new user, in comparison to an average user, in comparison to a normal person. I'm not a normal person. You know this. I know this. And oh, that's what my CPU is. Ooh, I need to run that benchmark again. Anyway, uh, so because of that, we'll see that we have Linux Mint over here. Now this is in what's called a virtual machine, which is like a virtual computer inside. your operating system that you're running. And so what you'll see in this process, over here, you'll see my clock. It's a good clock. Oh, come on. Tell me I didn't. Oh, no. Did I close that? No, it's still running. There it is. So here we have a page about Kirby. And here we have a thing saying stop. Okay. Now, that thing saying stop is my recorder. So we'll see if this even works. We've got good old Linux Mint, and it's running, and it's not installed. It's not installed on the virtual machine that we're running, and it's not installed on my computer. And here we have the Office stuff, and here's the sound stuff like Celluloid, Hypnotics. You can install multimedia codecs with one button click. You got Rhythm Box, you have admin tools. Some of these tools are really important, like Gparted here. I use that way more often than I should have to. And we have Terminal here. And Terminal is one of my favorite things on Linux, is it brings up this handy little terminal, and you can do something like sudo apt, it usually used to be apt-get, install fast fetch. So look, it's sudo, not sudo. Okay, it's sudo. Why? Because there was already an existing program called su, su, and that was for switch user or super user. And what that would do is that would allow you to then log in to an administrator account. And so when the guy developed sudo, he said, "Oh, it's going to be this, like this program, su, super user, do, sudo." Makes no sense to call it sudo. Oh, but I guess sudoku kind of messed things up for people. The fast fetch isn't in the repositories, but that's okay because neofetch, which is deprecated, probably will be. Oh, it's already installed. And you can see here you've got Linux Mint. And you can see that it's running inside the KVMQ-EMU virtual machine. And I just closed it there. And you know, you got places which shows you all your folders and directories. And you got date and time and desk lists and lots of stuff to explore. That's all fun. Exploring is what Linux is about for a new user. So look here. We can run Linux while installing Linux. I just double clicked on this install Linux Mint icon. Now I don't normally have icons on my desktop, but there's icons on this one. And to do it is really, really easy if you don't know what you're doing or if you do know what you're doing. Now I know what I'm doing. I'm just picking the default languages. I've decided to install the multimedia codecs. Well, I would if I was actually going to use this machine, but I'm not. I'm not going to install the multimedia codecs because I'm not using this machine. You should click this, and it will install those multimedia codecs. And you know, there's another one for additional hardware drivers and whatnot. And your easiest is going to be erase the disk and install Linux Mint. You can have advanced features, use LVM, you can erase the disk and use ZFS, and you can always encrypt it. Now, for most people, I do recommend encrypting, but because this is just a basic install, we're going to not do that. I will show you what happens if you go to something else. It takes you to this. It allows you to partition the disk, so you can add new partition table and new partition types and stuff like that into it. But that's not necessary because we're just going to erase the entire thing and install it. If you do this and you have Windows already installed on your hard drive, it's going to erase Windows and install it. Okay? So click on install now. Now, when you're installing it to your hardware, chances are you have something called secure boot that you might need to disable. And that can be a pain. You have to click F1 and all that stuff when you boot up. So you know what? Today I'm going to be a Glen. I'm going to call this Glen Mint. The username will be Glen, and then I'm going to pick a. I'm going to take a super secure password from another YouTuber, and I'm going to do that. Same super secure password. Now, you shouldn't log in automatically on your computer, and that's just a basic security thing. And so, what I'm trying to say is, you can use Linux while you are installing it. You can use Linux without installing it. You'll notice that I had Firefox up there and it wasn't installed. It wasn't installed on this virtual machine. I could have also recorded this by putting Linux Mint onto a drive and then booting up my computer the same way as you would normally, and point the boot path to that USB disk so that it would boot up, and I could use Linux Mint that way. Now, I didn't want to do that. I wanted to record it this way because I like my system the way I have it set up, and I wanted to have the back end all done and all that. So look here, you've got a whole bunch of stuff going on right now. It's copying files and all that, but it's installing. And in the meantime, we can go over here and we can go, ooh, let's do some let's do some oh, that's weird. They don't have games installed, but you can install games. That's in the software installer. Uh, you know, we can open up one of my favorite things in the world is terminal. We can open up a terminal here. It's going to take a minute because, virtual machines and all that stuff. And then we can create a document. We can start writing. Hi, Glen. This is a brief review of Linux. Now, from Glen. Today I'm Glen. Oh, I put a period there. I shouldn't have done that. I just save it, close it. I can cat that document. Oh, look at that document. It's right there. Saved and all that stuff. Now it's saved in a virtual space, so it's not actually there. Because it's in RAM. As soon as you reboot the computer, it's completely gone forever. Yay! So, yeah. We can use Linux while we're installing Linux. You can do basically whatever you want with Linux using alternative software to what you may use on Windows or Mac OS. You can also, in some cases, use the same software a lot of people use Audacity for their audio editing. For instance, GIMP is on Windows and Mac and Linux. GIMP, everybody knows, is the GNU image manipulation project, and it lets you do photo editing and image editing and all that other good stuff. Then there's Krita, or Krita, Krita. That's how it's spelled, and that allows you to do, oh, they're talking about stuff now. Look, there's GIMP and Inkscape. Inkscape, yeah. Krita is a little bit more advanced in some ways than GIMP and a little bit less advanced in other ways than GIMP. Yeah, a lot of people will say that these are Photoshop equivalents. They're not. I'm going to come right out now and say, no, they're not. They're alternatives. not as powerful in some ways, more powerful in other ways. But uh, in a lot of the ways that the professional artists who have been using Photoshop for a long time will tell you they're not equivalent at all in those ways that professional artists have been using Photoshop to do. And GIMP doesn't have CMYK until GIMP version 3, which you can install from the FlatHub beta if you want to. It's version 2.99. It's supposed to be released sometime this year. Actually, it was supposed to be released in June. But, you know, it was supposed to release a long time ago, too. We never know exactly when the new version is going to come out, but it has some interesting features. But my point is, Glenn, you can do the things that you do on Linux. Now, my review is going to rate it a 10 out of 10 for an operating system. Not a 9.5 out of 10 for an operating system. Not quite 10 out of 10. But I don't do those kinds of number assignment reviews. Okay? What I do is I show you something and I tell you stuff about it. And you decide how it's going to be. And I know that you picked up a computer, or your son picked up a computer, and it had Ubuntu on there, and you couldn't figure out how to access the internet on it, and you couldn't log in, and there was a whole bunch of other stuff, and you were having a major headache on it. It's a very different beast when you've installed it yourself. And it's not some old version that someone else set up with their account, and you have nothing for attachment to it. When you set it up yourself, you're going to be sitting there and you're going to say, "Oh, how do I run Adobe Illustrator?" Well, you don't. You use Inkscape. You use something called Boxy, which, by the way, I've used. Boxy is way easier to use than Inkscape, and it does a great job at what it does. I recommend it. Oh, I set up Spotify. Well, it says right there it's in the software manager. You can install it from the software manager. Okay, it shows you that it has VirtualBox and Wine so that you can install other operating systems like I'm doing right now. On real hardware, this install process would have been done by now. But this isn't real hardware that it's running on. It's running on a virtual machine. And once you get a little bit more advanced, you'll find out, oh, there's workspaces. Oh, look, everything just disappeared. We're on workspace 4 now. 3, 2. So if we're on workspace 2 and we open up a terminal, just to open up something easy, we go to workspace 3, it's gone. So we open up the file manager. It's called Files in its Mint. Oh, look at that. There's the files. Well, we go back to 2. There's our terminal. We go back to 1. There's the install process. And look, it's downloading something right now. In order to install it. Isn't that great? Yeah, it's doing an update or something. I don't know. This stuff is still running on the other desktops. It just gets out of your way. Gets it out of your way so you can focus on one thing, move over to another thing. Just like having different piles sitting in front of you. Different bowls sitting in front of you. They have that on Windows, but no one uses it. Or at least very few people do. A lot of people don't even know that it exists. They just open everything up and then they alt-tab, which works in Mint. Doesn't work on my system because I have a whole bunch of customized stuff that works the way that I want it to work. And you can customize your Mint just the way that I have with my NixOS. But it's going to be a different process. You can do what you want to with Linux. And that's really the important thing to remember. If you don't want to update your computer for 2.5 years, you don't have to update your computer for 2.5 years. I don't recommend that, but there are people who have done it. Then you can say, hey, you know what? I want to update my computer now. Chances are it won't because the repositories will have shut down. And you can find somewhere online how to update your computer. Actually, with Mint, it might. It might update with Mint because the repositories might still be working with Mint because it's a longer term release. And you don't always get that. Now, free Linux is different. So if you're looking at installing Linux there, you gotta find the one that's right for you. Now, what's bad about it? Well, a lot of people are going to say games are bad, but you know what? The reality is Steam using the Proton backend works incredibly well. Okay, um, the only things that really don't work well for gaming are things that require kernel level anti-cheats. And also you have to click one button in the settings to say use a compatibility mode. And that's it. If you go onto the Proton DB website, they've only verified so many things to work. I think it's something like 4% of games or something. I don't remember how many they verified. It's low. It's far lower than actually run. Uh, I don't have any problems. Everything works as well in Linux using Steam, using Proton, using Heroic Games Launcher, using Proton, using Lutris, which actually I don't use, but it would work fine using Lutris. It works fine within my hardware restraints. I don't have the most powerful computer here, as you can tell by the fact that this is still installing. Again, it would have been done before had I not been running it on a virtual machine. And part of running it on a virtual machine is you have a virtual hard drive that's running. And that has a lot of overhead, so it's slow. It's not as slow as an old spinning hard drive, but it's slow compared to my regular hard drive. And once this is done, I'll probably wipe it out. But you know what, Glenn? This is the review for you. If you want to give this a shot, get a USB key, put your Linux Mint on that USB key using the instructions on their website or the instructions on another site. I recommend using the program Balena Etcher or another program called Rufus to do it. Balena Etcher is probably your easier of the two. Put your stuff on there, reboot your computer with that USB key in, press the F1 key, the F2 key, the delete key, the shift key, the F12 key, the F10 key, and the escape key and the enter key a whole bunch of times so that you can get into your BIOS or CMOS so that you can change which your boot item is going to be to tell it to boot from that USB key. Once you've done that, Glen, once you've told it where to boot from, you get into Linux Mint just like we did now. And yeah, I finished installing, so I'm restarting it. It's going to tell me to remove the installation media and press enter, so I will. Boom. You'll see it comes down here in this little screen. This is the virtual machine manager that I use. It's called Virt Manager. See up here, I moved some NSO files to a downloads folder. Fine. Now it's booting from the install that we just did. And the only thing that you'll see that's any different is that it probably won't have that install Linux Mint icon. And also we'll have to put in the password. Get in. And then we're in. We'll load up the desktop here. Boom. We're in. This particular case, we're established through a virtual network here. It has this welcome screen. It'll tell you your first steps. Look, you can change your desktop colors. You set it up to take system snapshots, which is important, and everyone should do it. It has a driver manager. You can have multimedia codecs, update manager, systems. You can read, set up a firewall. very easily. Very easily. And you can tell it to show this at startup or not. There you go. Oh, and in this case, it didn't save the display settings. So we can just go ahead and change it to the native resolution, which you won't have to do on a real install. On a virtual machine, you've got to do that. There you go. And it's just that easy. Just that easy, Glen. Once you have it going, it'll just be a tool that you use. It's in the background. Do I think you should use it, Glen? No, I don't. Why not? I think that you're just knowing you, Glen. I think that you're stubborn and you don't really want to learn something new in order to get your stuff done. You want to use what you've always used. And what you've always used is Windows. And you know, it doesn't matter how many times Windows is going to break on you. You know, you're still going to want to keep using it. And what? That's fine. Because sooner or later your Linux would break too. The only difference is you're going to have a huge community of people that you can reach out to, and they'll give you usually a couple of commands to copy and paste into that wonderful terminal. Then it'll be done. You'll have it. Here's the terminal again. Look, there's the NeoFetch. Just like before. 2,106 packages by default? What the heck?